everyone, and welcome back. We are here for our 24-hour fundraising live stream. We're raising money to put on a convention in Boston in April of 2025 called SudokuCon, which will be a gathering of Sudoku enthusiasts, pencil puzzle enthusiasts, logic puzzle enthusiasts, whoever wants to come is welcome. And we're going to have a lot of fun there. So please join us. Now, we have a wonderful guest star with us. This is Qodec. He is a well-known puzzle setter and solver too, as far as I know. We see his name often on Cracking the Cryptic, and we're thrilled to have him with us today. So we're going to have a little interview and chat with him. Take it away, Wes.
Qodec.
Hello, good morning.
Well, do you want to introduce yourself, or shall we just get straight into the question?
Well, it's kind of hard to introduce myself. I don't know who's listening.
The world is listening.
The world is listening. Well, you'd better get to know me through the interview then, I guess.
That's fair.
We'll see how, yeah.
That's
Well,
fair.
We're going to talk a little bit about how to get into setting.
Mhm.
So I'd like to start by talking about your first setting experiences. How were
Right.
they?
Yeah, that's a while ago, obviously.
How long have you been setting? How many years?
Well, I was deliberating whether I should start with 2020, when I started publishing on Logic Masters Germany, or as a teenager when I also created puzzles, but nobody solved them because I just kept them to myself. But I should probably start with 2020, and uh, like so many of us, it was because I was bored, staying at home from COVID, and I figured I wanted to try something new, and to keep exercising my mind. And I figured that it would be interesting to see if I could create a puzzle, and that's what I did. But the first thing I did was just create a puzzle. I gave it to family; they could solve it. They thought it was very interesting. I gave them printouts and everything, and they gave it to an uncle of mine. I never heard of him. Um, so I never really got to find out if any of them solved the puzzle. A friend of mine did, though. It took him an entire weekend. So yeah, then I thought maybe I should just publish it somewhere and see what people think of it. But I didn't necessarily think it would be a good one to publish or whatever. I was just curious about what people would think of it, and then just put it on LMD.
Hmm, Okay.
Uh, yeah,
Dave asked if the ones from 2015 were any good. Oh, when you were a teenager. Ha.
yeah. When I was a teenager, yeah. I didn't publish anything from there, and I don't even have those puzzles anymore.
Hmm,
So,
okay.
and most of them were half finished anyway. But anyway, I posted on LMD. I got one or two nice comments, and I thought, okay, this isn't too bad. But little did I know that I was pretty much showing the puzzle to the world's elite, pretty much.
Hmm.
So I thought, okay, people can solve my puzzle, and hey, maybe it'll be fun to try another. And I think it was at that time that I also joined the CTC Discord, which was after the first one. Um,
May I
you
ask what was your first featured puzzle on CTC?
that was Orbit. Yeah, I'm sure of it.
And do you remember what the reaction was to it?
Well, I it was at that time when they were very busy putting out their first book, the greatest hits, and I thought they might enjoy it because it had the Vistimofel ring in it, and I sent it in, and it took more than a month before it actually appeared. I think a month and a half. Um, but of course, they didn't know me, and you know, if you're busy doing stuff and you also have to put out a video every day, and then it's, you know, you go with the safe option, you know, people that you know, or one of the I mean, Vistimofel was already popular back then, or people that you know won't, you know, keep you occupied for more than an hour, or you know, so long. I think their videos were a lot shorter back then, but still. But Simon did like it, and so 3 days later, they featured another puzzle of mine, which I didn't send
Wow.
in. Yeah, yeah. So that was a huge, huge surprise. I wasn't expecting that at all, but it felt like a gift. Yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
You were still happy with the first puzzles you made.
Uh,
Let's take those Sudokus as the first.
um, it's a good question uh, because I mean, if I look back, they were really good as learning experiences, branching out into different rule sets and trying things out. That was a good thing. Um, and I learned a lot from them. So I took a couple of risks, which is good. Um, but I wouldn't make the same puzzles again. No, not
Mm.
today.
What
Um,
were the most important things you learned from those?
um, well, let's come back to orbit there. I don't know if you. I mean, I've got the puzzle. I can imagine the puzzle in my head because it was kind of a pivotal one.
Uh-huh.
It's going to be hard to put it on screen, but I think I can explain it. It's a really tough puzzle, and you have to find a couple of really tough deductions and unusual deductions as well. And that was the first time that I learned that it's a good idea to put in clues that are not necessarily you know, needed
Oh,
to make
sorry.
the puzzle unique. Oh,
That was me.
oh, okay.
I was trying to pull up the puzzle.
That's funny. I didn't hear anything though. I could see it.
I heard it in my. Oh, you can see my screen.
That's
I
not
forgot about that.
That's
yeah, yeah, that's not the one
that's
that
not the puzzle though.
that's not
No,
mine. It's close
I
though.
put in. I searched for Qodec orbit
Yeah,
Sudoku, and that's what came up. So
it's from November 2020. Um,
Anyway.
but yeah, it's when I learned that it's a good idea to put in clues that are that don't make the puzzle unique, but are good for the solve path because the puzzle is pretty much unsolvable without them.
hmm
Uh, and then the funny thing is that when I put it on LMD, um, it didn't take long. I think it was a couple of hours, and then I got a comment from somebody who told me that the odd even clues that I put in the puzzle to make it solvable, I thought that
Mm-hmm.
they weren't necessary, and he solved the puzzle without.
Okay.
So that was put me in a sort of crisis because I thought, oh well, I thought it would be better if I put the odd even clues in at the corners, and yet that was the first comment that I got, and I believe now that it was a good decision to put them in. But I really had to question myself for a little bit there.
It's funny that you should tell that story because I actually had a similar experience with one of my puzzles that I didn't put in one of the clues that I had thought to put in because I
Yeah.
thought it was going to telegraph too much. It was going to give away too much, so I left it out. And then I found that about halfway through solving the puzzle, a lot of people got stalled in the same spot, and if they'd had that clue, they would have been able to keep going.
Yeah. It's
So it
it's
can
the
go
other
either
side of
way.
the coin. Yeah.
Yeah.
And especially because Orbit has a set deduction in it. The where you compare sets of cells, and you know that some cells have to have certain digits or matching digits or an equal sum. Yeah, you kind of want to be nice about it and not. I mean, set should be the last resort after you tried everything else. And if you put something in, so you have to put the clues in to make sure that people actually see it. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Set is like its own thing. It's not like any other solving technique.
agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
Plus, it covers the whole puzzle by definition,
Hmm.
because you have to consider several houses, or for who doesn't know what a house is, it's pretty much uh, general name for anything that has all the 9 digits in it. So it could be a row or a column or a box or a disjoint set even, or a diagonal. That's all houses.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's a global deduction. But you will find that if you do more recent puzzles of mine, none of them contain set. I only did that at the start of my career.
When I started setting, I was really into it for like a month because it
Yeah,
was the hype with like
yeah,
magic squares and stuff.
yeah,
And then I remember I put one in testing using some kind of set, and then I got roasted by Shy because it was the gazillionth puzzle using set.
yeah,
And
yeah.
since then, I've never used it. I think it's nice to find bits of tension in the grid and stuff, but
Yeah.
as part of a solve path, I don't think you should use it.
No, and I agree. Unless um, if it's you have to make it really really clean.
Yeah.
I've seen people put their wonderful set in, but then they need a solve path after, and
Hmm.
that introduces other possibilities for sets. So then you look at the puzzle and you think, okay, it must be set, and you try out 5 different possibilities for sets, and only one of
Yeah.
them is going to be the right one. And then you
Oh,
just if you guess wrong 3 times, then you just give up. So
sorry,
Most definitely.
we're being video bombed by my cat here.
Oh,
oh,
hello.
hello.
Let's say quick hello. This is Socks.
Hey,
Hi, Socks.
quickly, what's time-wise? What is our plan for now?
Let's see. I don't see Sven in the guest room yet.
No, because we
So
shouldn't.
I think we should just keep chatting with Codec, unless you
Yeah,
have another
like
idea.
Tapa was planned 5 minutes ago,
Oh, that's
and
right.
Oh, wow, I've been
poor
talking for
Sven.
20 minutes already.
I
Oh,
forgot.
So
I'm enjoying this
yeah,
conversation so much.
yeah,
okay.
Um,
same. All right,
Wes, what would you prefer?
let's just go on with Codec and do Tapa somewhere later.
I think we're gonna have time because the Beardoku isn't gonna take as long as we
Yeah,
as
exactly.
we.
John and I are gonna solve blazingly fast.
Hmm?
Yeah,
Um, all
it's
right.
so.
So we've talked about why not to use sets. Uh, Most important letters. Oh, this is might be interesting. What do you think are the pros and cons of using computer assistants as a beginner?
Oh yeah. Well, it's funny because I talked to my significant other about it, who's in chat, by the way. Hello.
Hello.
And she said that and that, and I understand it, that it gave her confidence to use a computer solver. And I can see where you're coming from. You have this giant puzzle and you've got clues, and maybe you haven't got that much experience solving. Maybe you do, but then it's really a new thing to sort of start with a blank canvas, and then you have to make the thing unique because anything puzzle without a unique solution. I don't know if you ever solved one. But if you get stuck, you never really know if that's because you didn't see anything or because there's just nothing there, which would be the case in a puzzle with more than one solution. So I get that you would want to use it to sort of guarantee that indeed the puzzle has only one solution.
Yeah.
So that's and I've used it for that specific purpose. Although there's a huge temptation of putting in clues and then letting the solver do its job, and then at some point it's going to be unique. It doesn't mean that there's actually a path that's findable for a human solver, because computer solvers work completely differently.
Okay.
Okay. It was gonna
Well,
be
let me just say a quick thank you very much, Qodec, for joining us.
Yeah.
It was really interesting to talk to you and sort of meet you, and maybe you'll make it to Boston. We would love to have you. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure.
All right.
Yeah, thanks.
All
I
right.
thought,
Oh, he's
okay.
gone.
Never mind.
Wow, that was fast.
So we'll bring in Sven, and we'll get to our tapas and our sagurus. Don't worry.
Host disabled.
The question that I was going to ask him if we'd had more time was, what was his first thought that went through his head when he learned of the Fistmifel ring for the first time?
I was gonna ask him what was his most disliked variant.
So Qodec, if you can still hear us, I see you're in the chat. Feel free to answer those questions in the chat for everybody. All right, so Sven is coming in. Just a moment. I see his avatar. We'll just wait for him to join us. All right. So we did, Qodec, we did have one comment. I don't know if you saw it earlier. Vizzy G said, if you do make a convoluted, unfair set puzzle, please send it to me. I will still solve it. So I thought that was cute. Hello, Sven. Are you here? You're here. Welcome. So let me give everybody a quick introduction for those that don't know you. So thank you very much for being here with us. Sven is the genius behind Sven's SudokuPad, among other things. Yay! And he is also one of our amazing, amazing tech guys for this live stream. He has worked above and beyond. He has gotten no sleep. He has gotten through a to-do list that if you saw it, you would never believe it. So thank you, Sven, and we're very happy to have you here with us today.
Happy to finally be on camera.
Yeah, there you go. So we don't have a specific, line of questioning for you today, other than to ask you, what's coming for SudokuPad? What do you have in mind for the future?
Holy moly! Well, so much. I mean, every now and then I think about that. It's been what, 3 years now I've been working on this thing, and kind of blows my mind. But it also is kind of a wake-up call to say, 3 years and I still haven't done the thing and the other thing and the thing that the other person asked about and all this sort of thing. So it's a balancing act between doing the things that need to be done, doing the things I want to do, and doing the things other people want me to do. But kind of big picture stuff, I'm actually having some conversations with myself and others about thinking about a SudokuPad 2.0, because I'm realizing I'm kind of stuck in a place where I can't do the things I want to do because of the things I need to do. Sort of, it's always like, oh, you got to fix the small thing, or you got to, oh, well, yeah, I always planned to do this, but, it's a big thing and there's all these other small things we need to do first. So I feel I'm at a point now where it works well enough. We're really just making small improvements. We're making it slightly better, but we're not doing the big things. And to do some of those, I need to kind of take some time to clean it up on the inside. So it's not just, it's not just add feature 2700. I mean, we're what version are we on right now? We're at I think it's version 0.343.
Wow.
Which is a big sign of my commitment phobia to version 1.0, which I will skip. There will be no version 1.0. I don't think so. But a version 2.0 might be in order to let me say, okay, I'm going to work on version 2.0. It's going to take a couple of months to kind of prepare it. But then I can do the big things, and the big things I think that are really important is discovery. So we're talking user accounts, we're talking cloud saves, we're talking a place where people can publish their puzzles, where people can find the puzzles. Where after you finish a puzzle, it'll say, hey, here's your playlist, here are your bookmarked puzzles, or here are your daily gas subscription, or your, the streamer so-and-so has published 3 videos that you've missed, and here are the puzzles from those videos and the links to those videos, putting all that information together.
Yeah,
because
that would
right
be
now,
cool.
SudokuPad is just kind of sort of floating in the void, There's no, you don't go to SudokuPad, you go somewhere else, and then you click on a link and you play in SudokuPad. So you're using it, it's Word for Word documents, but it needs to be YouTube for videos, right? For puzzles. So I definitely always wanted to take it that direction. And I think it's that's the real next big step, is the place for people to actually discover the puzzles, and for people who have puzzles to get them out to an audience. I mean, we saw the counter thing. The counter thing doesn't expose any additional puzzles, but just giving that community a feel of people are actually playing the puzzles and seeing them is super powerful, right? And that's kind of the motivation a lot of the setters are missing, I think, because that there are discovery surfaces. There's Logic Masters Germany as sort of the big one, but places like that often, you put a complex puzzle there and it's hard to find your audience, and you get a couple of solves. And then several months later, somebody discovers it somewhere else, and everybody's like, oh my God, this is so great. How did I have never known about this puzzle before, And I have certain insights about, how many people are coming through, how many puzzles are coming through, what variety of puzzles get solved, and so on. And I'm really happy, after I added the counters, I was really happy to see not just, the CTC puzzles getting all the solves, but, even the average solve count, I think, is over 200 or something for puzzles with more than 2 solves, which is much more than I ever hoped for, because I understood there's tens of thousands of puzzles, but many will only be solved by a handful of people because they're hard to find, but that doesn't seem to be the case. So I'm very hopeful to have such a variety of puzzles available that you can solve a puzzle, and then the system will be able to tell you, hey, people who like the puzzles you like also like this one, or people who solve this puzzle also like this one, And I mean, I'm a tech guy. I'm not a I'll have to be honest, right? I have never set a puzzle. I'm not a puzzle guy as such. And my limit of kind of enjoyment for really hard puzzles is also I don't, puzzles that Simon would take 2 hours to solve, I wouldn't enjoy them, right? So I'm more James Sinclair's puzzles. That's my jam. Those, I love those.
Yeah.
Right. They're just slightly harder
They're
than
just
gas.
right.
Yeah, but like I love those. They're beautifully made. He puts a lot of care and intention in that. And I think, if anything, I'm on the side of being more of a puzzler than the average puzzler, right? So there's also that sort of problem with the community being focused around people that are into this for years and get more and more into it, and then forget what 90% of the population would enjoy in a puzzle.
Mhm.
And I feel kind of part of my role is to redress that balance a bit, right? So we're not just making the super hard puzzles for 5 people, but we're making the really enjoyable puzzle for 1,000 people, for 5,000
Right.
people. Bring in a little bit of that. I hate to say it, but the commercial interest, right? Like I'm one of the few sort of commercial operators, and I'm also saying, okay, well, there is an advantage to that in terms of not just think about what I want, but think about what most people want or what many want. And like, something like James Sinclair's puzzles, or most of the puzzles, people create them as like, okay, they're thinking about the next puzzle, they're thinking about the new gas tomorrow, next week, but we already have years of excellent puzzles, and everybody who starts new tomorrow hasn't played those yet, and they're not worse because they were made a year ago or a week ago, right? And I look at my site stats, I look at the visitors from the CTC videos, and I have a huge amount of churn. 40 to 60% of people every month are new people. So they don't care that a puzzle was made a year ago. They've never seen it, and they currently have very little chance of ever seeing it unless they go back through CTC videos or something like that, So I
Right.
definitely want to have a place where all these places, where, like, earlier in the stream, Bremster was talking about these packets that he made and these beautiful series he made. And often they have a spike when he releases them. And then people, the people who knows played them already, and the people who don't know don't have much of a chance of learning about them. Yes, he posts links to his packs and on his videos stuff, but it's all like the average person is quote unquote too lazy, right? Like they don't get around to finding them there.
Yeah.
Like the app, the SudokuPad, the paid app only has like 10 or 12 puzzles in it, because it was never those were just, I just threw them in there as something. It was never
Right.
designed to be selling puzzles.
Right.
But of course, I wouldn't be surprised if a large fraction of my buyers play those 12 puzzles and think that's it. You know what I mean? Which is terrible, because that's not how it should be, right? But I can't expect them to find the right Discord and find the right links and all that sort of thing.
Right.
So part of what I want to achieve, and I've done a lot of prototypes in recent months, like there's the endless puzzle mode that was very quick thrown in there. Like, hey, what if I just had, a couple of 1,000 puzzles of very generic types in there for somebody who just wants to click some buttons while they're watching TV or something, But it's really just a way of practicing and of figuring out how to display the puzzles and where to put them and all this sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's the really big place to go to, is to say, hey, somebody like Cracking the Cryptic, somebody like Rank, somebody like Fistomafel, there should be a channel that you can subscribe to, right? And then you should get all their stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Be it puzzles they make or puzzles they present on videos and so on and so forth. And the tricky bit for me there is to balance what I currently do, which is SudokuPad, which is just the mechanic of playing the puzzle, but with how people interact with the puzzles, which is much more than that, which is, the social aspect, the rankings, I want to press a like button after I play a puzzle that I like, and I want to see what somebody else likes. And I want to discuss it, and I don't want to have to find a particular Discord channel on a particular Discord server where if I scroll up 30 pages, there might be a discussion about this puzzle, right?
Right.
And I want to know, like, hey, I like Bremster's stuff. And then I want to know not just what Bremster's made, I want to know what Bremster recommends. I know what, he hangs out with Skunkworks. I want to know what other things in Skunkworks he participated in, all that sort of thing, right? I want this social network of puzzles. And that's kind of the dream. That's what I really want to build. And then kind of protect the interest of the people making the puzzles. Like, I've been thinking about this ever since we have that counter list. It's beautiful to have that top 10 list, top 100 list. I want to, I haven't really publicized that because it's not really built well for it. Right now it's a bit of a mess, technically speaking. But I want to link those puzzles right now. You see the links and you see the titles and so on, and you can probably Google them and maybe you'll find the puzzle. But you should be able to just click on it, right? But at the same time, I know that there might be commercial puzzles in there. I know there might be something from James Sinclair's paid content and so on and so forth, right? So I need to find a way of protecting those interests, And I don't want to just link to a puzzle. Think of the Cracking the Cryptic books, for example. All those puzzles are in the app somewhere, right? All the puzzles that anybody ever typed in from another app are in there, paid puzzles and so on. You know, I don't have control over that.
Yeah.
But I need to avoid stepping on people's toes. I don't want to kind of break the community as a whole, you know? So I need to, like, I've talked to a couple of people. I want to have a little bit of a meeting with, you know, people like Dimon, people like James Sinclair, you know, Clover, anybody who's got a Patreon, anybody who's putting puzzle packs out there, how to deal with paywalled puzzles in the app, right? Because I want people to be able to play them, but I don't necessarily want to publicize their links somewhere where they should be, you know? And it's funny because it makes me feel I'm boxing in the wrong leagues, because it makes it feels a lot like the sort of stuff that YouTube dealt with copyright and, you know, videos and all this sort of stuff, you know, any big site with user generated content, you know. And it's, so far I've avoided that by not hosting the content, right? You know, they're just floating around there as
Right.
links. But it's not sustainable. Like, you know, the big link package, it's just not working well. Like, we're missing out on a lot of, you know, every time TinyURL goes down, we all are collectively kind of almost fainting, because we don't know what's happening with all those puzzles. Are they going to be lost, etc., right? And we don't want that either. Yeah, so that's kind of the big one. Like, if you told me what's the one thing that sort of where it needs to be, it'll be that, right? That's like the mega feature. But of course, I have a bit of a list of sort of big features that aren't just, you know, I want to modify a color or whatever, but are up there in things that definitely need to come soon. You know, like puzzle pack support. And I mean, editor was high on my list 2 years ago, but now we have Sudoku Maker. We have a couple of projects in the works. It'll be quite a bit of work for me to compete with the functionality of these tools, even FPuzzles, at the usability level that I pride myself at. Like, I cannot build something that's janky, right? So my app is the sort of for the masses thing. So you know, my plan was always to start simple, like, hey, what is the beginner likely to want? And of course, all the expert puzzle setters are going to be like, oh, where's my, you know, 3rd degree of mathematical alliteration tool or whatever, right? That's the thing. I'm not a setter, so it's very hard for me to even think in that direction. So that kind of thing is, I think, lower priority. But that's part of like what I need to figure out now. It's like, what are the things that I think are important, and what are the things that the community really needs, and what does the community really want? Because they might be different things, right? So, you know, we have solvers and setters here. Like, what if you had a thing that you think, not just, you know, the thing that you would like to SudokuPad to have because it annoyed you yesterday for not having it, you know, the wrong color or whatever. But if you kind of step back and said, okay, what should be the next step? You know, what would you expect from a SudokuPad 2.0?
Definitely. Karen?
I'm here. I am so sorry. Sven, I am listening to you, but I was up literally all night last night, the previous night, with testing and everything, and I didn't get any sleep today, and it's the end of my awakeness. I am so sorry. I'm so embarrassed, but
I mean,
you're not boring me. It's not you.
Sven, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So I hate to dumb it down like this, but it sounds like you're trying to create like a social media platform, but puzzle based. Is that, I mean, like an Instagram for Sudoku? Is it?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm entirely honest, right? There's Logic Masters Germany, right?
Right.
And they have features we need, because that's what they're operating on, right? They're operating on the fact that there's a page for a puzzle and you can put a comment on it, you know. And the number of people that complain to me that SudokuPad doesn't support their solve puzzle codes or whatever, right? And I get it, right? Because for people living in that community is everything, right? That's where they get their puzzles from. That's where they communicate. For a lot of people, it's a must, you know. Same thing with the TinyURL links. You know, I've recently added native short IDs, so you can have short URLs in SudokuPad, no problem. I encourage everybody to do that. But people say, oh, I need the stats from TinyURL, right? I get that, right? Now, I still do the short link, you know, please, and then do a TinyURL. But in the future, that means I need stats for links, right? So there's features that the setters want that I need to support to get the setters on board. Now, from my perspective, of course, the setters on Logic Masters Germany, they communicate with a fairly small community and a very high-level community. Other setters, experienced puzzlers. That's why, for me, for example, the difficulty ratings on Logic Masters Germany are useless, right? Because they don't apply to me. It's like, oh, it's a 2.5 out of 5. It's a 1. Still can't solve it in less than an hour, right? So it doesn't mean anything to me. And from a technical perspective, that whole typing in codes thing and sending out PDFs as puzzle packs, that drives me nuts, right? So in SudokuPad, I currently record, there's the egg. I currently record the whole solve with timing information. So I want I recently, it came up with some setters. They said, oh, currently SudokuPad tells you if your digits so far are correct. And this was a highly requested feature. Again, this is a feature for the masters. It's a feature I personally really like because it saves me from wasting time when I made a silly typo where I didn't type in the digit I meant to type in, and I don't remember when it was. So I can now just undo until it says everything is correct. And then I don't have to, before I just restart the puzzle because I would never have found it, right? And in fact, I want to add a feature where I can press a button and it just undoes to the last good state. Because I'm solving for fun, and then people but I'm doing a competition on my Patreon and so on and so forth, right? And I understand, but people can always cheat. They can cheat by literally having their friend who's good at Sudoku sit next to them and help them solve the puzzle, right? Like they don't even need to cheat by looking at the puzzle code or by running a solver, even though that would be relatively easy for many puzzles. So I'm a bit on the side of the solver, but the setters are obviously the ones that are providing the value. So if setters don't set puzzles for SudokuPad, the solvers have nothing to solve. So I gotta keep both sides happy, right?
Yeah.
So I think as a technologist, there's got to be a technical solution, right? So in the future, what I would love to see is to use the replay data itself. I would like to have, and this is the other thing. This is a thing I would love to have as an optional big project is like a competition mode. Why does the Puzzle World Championship not use digital systems? Because of cheating, right? But if you have timing information, your entire puzzle solve is like a giant captcha, right? You can look at that. You can, if you have a lot of these, and I could generate thousands of these from the people using the site, it would be very easy to tell if somebody's cheating, if suddenly they enter 20 digits in half a second, right? And it would be very hard to make that, to cheat and also make it not detectable. You know what I mean? So I would like to do it this way. So these things aren't things that people need to do. These are things that just happen in the system. The system just knows. The system knows what your time is. The system knows where you got stuck. The system knows if, for a setter, the system can tell you which part of your puzzle is hard and which part is easy. It should be able to tell you where people get stuck. They don't get stuck on this digit. They get stuck 23% into the puzzle, or they get stuck on this clue or whatever. They fill in this cage the last, or they don't never use this thermal clue or whatever, right? Like there needs to be this kind of thing. And that only happens and works if you have a large enough number of solves. Like statistical analysis doesn't work on 5 or 10 solves, but it works on 1,000, on 5,000. And currently I have about 24,000 users on the site every day. I don't know exactly how many solves I have. And that's the other thing. I really want to know how many people open puzzles versus how many solves we have. Like the solves we can kind of see now, we reach 5 million solves. We could figure out how many solves a day that is. But we don't know how many people attempt a puzzle and don't solve it, right? And we don't know if they solve it in one day or over multiple days and all these sorts of things. So that's where I would like to take it from a technical perspective, and that's a lot of work that I'd have to do that doesn't show up on the outside, and that's the hard part that I don't manage to do right now, and why I would like to kind of step back and say, okay, let's put SudokuPad in a sort of maintenance mode where we say we'll fix bugs and we'll finish off some must-have things. But in the meantime, we're going to look at SudokuPad 2.0 as a means to kind of take a bit of time to establish all this stuff that makes the real fundamental changes possible, and those would be kind of the social interaction part of it needs to be sort of automated, right? So you shouldn't have to tell the puzzle what you think of a rating it is, because your 3 out of 5 is completely different from my 3 out of 5, right? You can give your opinion, but then the system will compare your opinion to other opinions you've had on other puzzles and what other opinions other people had on those puzzles, right? So they'll say, you're giving on average a rating of 2 to puzzles that I give an average or a rating of 3, right? So it will adjust your ratings for puzzles vis-a-vis my play style, and then the rating I see for the puzzle in terms of difficulty will be different than yours, right? So again, this is sort of standard stuff that, you know, YouTube and Spotify and all these big companies already do with pictures and videos and so on, you know. But I think that's definitely possible for puzzles at the numbers we're getting now. And you know, and there's the other thing, you know, people say, oh, you know, like there's some guy on Logic Masters Germany who's just sort of solving through puzzles to give them bad ratings, or, you know, rate bombing them and so on. And again, these things only happen when you have small numbers.
Really?
Yeah. And this stuff only happens when you have small numbers, so one person can make an influence. And when you don't have enough overall numbers that you can filter that stuff out. Like a SudokuPad puzzle wouldn't get a rating for the first 50 or 100 solves, right? So, you know, it would collect that information. And then once it reaches a certain critical mass, then it would start getting rated, just like big social media sites would do, you know? So yes, like I basically want to build a Logic Masters Germany sort of, but only in terms of the social network kind of features there, right? So I want a page per solver, I want a page per setter, I want a page per puzzle, right? And then I want you to be able to have, quote unquote, a feed of puzzles recommended for you by the puzzles you've liked. You know, that the usual stuff. I mean, it's almost stereotypical at this stage. But what I think is more interesting, like as the way I use YouTube, for example, is I don't look at the homepage. I look at my subscription feed, you know? So I treat it as my inbox of newsletters that I subscribe to, you know? And that's, I think, how it should be. You know, people should say, hey, I like Gas puzzles. I like James Sinclair puzzles. I like Bremster puzzles, right? So I subscribe to their channels and I get their feeds in, you know. But then it could give me a recommendation. It could say, oh, you like puzzles of this level of difficulty or these kind of constraints, or lately you've done a lot of, I don't know, Minesweeper puzzles or fog puzzles. Oh, you like fog puzzles. Here's the big list of fog puzzles, you know. And oh, you really enjoyed this puzzle. You can post it on your wall, or you can share it with your friends, or that kind of stuff, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But it's all about not just discovery of new puzzles, but also about rediscovery of existing puzzles, right? And I think that's one big weakness we have right now, is like I'm sure if you had all the puzzles, let's say on Logic Masters Germany, and you look at the number of times they're being played, and you put that on a timeline, I'm sure it always goes down over time, right? The older the puzzle is, the less likely it's being played.
Right.
And I think that needs to change, because puzzles don't get worse with age, right? So as setters, we lose interest. You know, as setters, or I say we, I'm not a setter, but I feel like a lot of setters, they care about the next puzzle they're building or the puzzle they've just built. They don't care about a puzzle they made a year ago, right? And I think that's such a shame, because for a solver who's not solved the puzzle, it doesn't matter if it's last year's puzzle or yesterday's puzzle, right? And there's just so many of them, so many good ones. I mean, you know, I didn't store puzzles, but I had server logs just of the URLs, and I just did a scan of those, and that was easy 20,000 puzzles, right? And now with the solve counter, I started just recording them. I don't do anything with them yet, but I'm scared of losing them as well to, you know, TinyURL going down or some other reason in the future, you know. And I think that's the other thing, right? Like I feel like I have the opportunity to be a steward of this stuff, and I want to be a good steward of that, right? So I need to, like, I cannot just put these puzzles in a database. I need to get permission. I need to get setters. I need to get authorship and all that stuff. That's like, to me, that's a bigger problem than the technology of it. You know, I need to figure out a way of taking all these puzzles, finding the owners and getting their permission to, and not just their permission, but give them a lot of control over what happens with the puzzle. Are they secret? Are they never to be seen again? Are they to be promoted? Are they to be sold? You know, that sort of thing. And if I start today from a blank slate, it would be a hard start. So one thing I've also been thinking a lot about is, how do I contact authors of puzzles? Like, ultimately what I need to do is, you know, I need to basically say, okay, like I cannot reach 20,000 different people, but maybe I can say, okay, anybody who's got more than X thousand solves or X dozen puzzles or whatever, right? Many of them maybe I'll find through Discord today and so on. But then eventually I'll have to put a call out and say, okay, you know, if your author name is so-and-so, please get in touch. And then I have to figure out a way of figuring out, are they really who they say they are, you know, and all this sort of stuff. Like, it's not going to be easy. And I don't expect to solve it easily. So it's more like, it's got to be an opt-in system, right? It's got to be only if I'm sure that is really the author of these puzzles. They really own them. and they have control of what happens with the puzzles. They have a nice interface. They have a good user experience. This can't be through editing text files or 23 different tools and browser extensions. They need to have an account. They need to have a list of puzzles, and they need little chat boxes. What happens with the puzzles? And then once those sort of validated puzzles reach a critical mass, then it can go out to the solvers. Now they can say, okay, I want quality puzzles that are promoted for public consumption with full permission from the author, yada yada yada, right? And then the author get their credit. I mean, we've had YouTube channels not credit authors enough and things like that, and that's I'm not about that, And it won't be about the prestige. It's not going to be, oh, my puzzle is on that site. No, any puzzle can be on the site. It's more about my puzzle had its day in the limelight on a YouTube channel, or on a pack or on a Patreon or whatever. 6 months later, I just now nobody cares for it anymore in those venues, and now I can sort of archive it to the big, I don't know if it'll be under the name of SudokuPad or if it would have to be something else, because it'll have to be sort of more community owned, the big puzzle database in the sky, right?
Yeah.
And then it can be rediscovered by new solvers. And then through those puzzles, they can rediscover the setters, and then maybe find their favorites, and then maybe find their newer content, and maybe even their paid content and their Patreons and all sorts of things.
Karen's still awake?
No.
I don't
Sven,
think
you
so.
bored her to sleep. Sven.
Yes. Glad my voice is soothing enough to accomplish that.
Oh, it is. It is. Absolutely.
No, but in all seriousness, Sven, I think it's great for the community that you're so passionate about what you're doing. In the past, 30 minutes I've listened to you, I'm so excited to hear and see what you have to do. Are you working alone, or do you have a team or someone else with?
Oh my God, I wish. Yeah, so I think part of the reason that SudokuPad isn't quite where I would like it to be is part of it. The whole reason is me, right? But I suffer pretty badly from ADHD. So I can work really hard and I can do great things, but I'm not fully in control about what I can do when.
Right.
So sometimes there'll be a simple thing that needs doing that I can't do, and then there'll be a complex thing that really doesn't need doing, and I can do it, right? And I'm sure if you look at the sort of features, how and which features and when and what gets implemented, it probably is quite clear, which are which, right? And it's the real sad thing is it's not just, if I want it, if I like it, it's easy, and if I hate it, it's hard. No, unfortunately, sometimes even the stuff I really enjoy and really want to do, I find really hard to do, right? So, and there she goes. So that is one of the big problems, and it's also actually something that's part of the problem of me working on my own. I've been wanting to set up a production team of sort of volunteer producers, right? People who just hold me accountable, right? People who just say, hey, you said you're going to do this thing. Where's your progress for this week, right? You said this week you're going to do 3 things, right? And I haven't figured out how to do yet. Unfortunately, even putting that together is really hard for me, because I think that there is enough support in the community and my Patreons and so on that could do it. I really feel horrible. I gave my patrons a survey of features to vote on at the beginning of the year, and they did, and I still haven't. I looked at it recently, and I'm like, oh, some of these I've already done in the meantime, right? But not deliberately, because I didn't stick to the plan, right? So there's a lot of things I need to do to kind of try to figure out how to manage myself better, because I'm really bad at running myself, at producing myself. And part of that, I think, has to be time-based. I can't just say, okay, I got to finish this important thing. I got to say every week or every month, I got to do a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of something. I gotta deal with issues that come up for setters and solvers. I gotta deal with features that people requested that aren't important, but some people want, I gotta deal with features requested by paying supporters, what do the users of the paid app want? What do the Patreon users want, And it's and there's gotta be space for the big plans. And here's 3 months of work that's not gonna result in anything visible until the 5th month, right? But it's gotta get done. Otherwise, we never get to these bigger things, So yes, to answer a very short question with a very long answer, yes, I work on my own. And that is part of the reason why the whole thing is in the kind of state that it's in. I have a lot of support. Like there's a couple of people behind the scenes. I don't know. I don't have permission to say names, so I'm not going to do that. But there are some people who have built tools around SudokuPad. They've helped. They've fixed bugs. I've had people, like the code isn't open source, but I had people recreate the whole thing just to debug an issue and send me patches of how to fix it. So that's been really, really really powerful, really powerful aid. And the Penpa importer came out of that. I've been talking to Mark Techfen about that for a long time, back and forth, and how to do it. And I've looked at the Penpa format back in the day a couple of times, and it's always so daunting because it's a little difficult. And eventually, I told him, like maybe like if you really want to do something, he was, biting at the bit to help me somehow. And I said, if you could do that as an external tool that just converts it to FPuzzles data or some other data, and then it just works in SudokuPad, and he took the challenge up, and eventually it just popped out. So this is kind of community support, and it's amazing what he did there. And a couple of similar things happened in other areas, but it's of course tricky to integrate as well in the end. So it's like it would be nice if you could just drag a Penpa link into SudokuPad and just open it, not have to know about the tool and put it there and all this sort of thing, And I have a vision of like in the future there being a central, like the database of puzzles I want to build isn't just for SudokuPad, I think it's important that all puzzle tools and formats will be supported there, Like I don't want to alienate anybody, and it's I've read a couple of comments where people were asking for the Penpa source of a Penpa puzzle that they played on SudokuPad to make some fixes or changes, and the person didn't have the link anymore, right? And that's a shame. Like I'm a hoarder. I don't like to lose original data, So I'd love for puzzles to have all their different kinds of formats recorded, so you can always go back to the original. You can play it in Penpa, you can play it in FPuzzles. Hopefully in the future, maybe even go from one to the other freely. That would be beautiful, Like people who like, there's some people who like the Penpa interface better than SudokuPad. Like, I like the SudokuPad interface has a lot of compromises. It was designed to be user-friendly, like user experience is the highest sort of commandment for SudokuPad at the cost of features sometimes, And I always try to make it mobile-friendly, and I think that's kind of part of why people like it. But of course, it also means why it can't do things. It doesn't have hex grids. It doesn't have the complex tool choices that Penpa supports and things like that. So it's my kind of my biggest dream would be if I could earn enough money from just like Patreon support or something similar, then I'd happily open source the whole thing and just make it a community project. That said, that's just that's not a concrete plan because I don't have experience running a big open source project either, right? Like it's not as easy as just open sourcing the code. Like running a open source project long term and managing it and moving it in the right direction is also not trivial. So like I try, I do what I can, and I try to do it from a honest place. Like I try to, SudokuPad is, I'll be honest, right? It doesn't really pay the bills. So I'm not, there's no ads on the site. I personally don't like ads. Maybe I should be putting ads. Maybe that's the solution. I don't know. But I also always try to think about what's the value for the community. I feel like I've seen some other, like for example, some mobile apps that aren't part of the community, right? There's Sudoku, Sudoku.com. Like there's big sources of puzzles out there that aren't really part of the community, that don't communicate with the community. And I feel that's a bit sad. Like it's a missed opportunity. And I feel like SudokuPad, I want it to support the community. I want it to do what people want it to do, I don't want people to worry about it going away tomorrow. I don't want people to think, oh, if I put my puzzle in SudokuPad, will he steal it and then charge money for it tomorrow? Like I want people to be able to trust me because I do the right thing, Yeah, you're laughing, but like I probably think more about these things than others. I think like how could I exploit SudokuPad and how do I stop that, right? Like how do I stop myself from being able to? And it's like like I had this discussion with Ranks a while ago about Sudoku not Lab Studio, right? And like he started that at a time when I was really working hard on my editor tool. we came to the conclusion, I agreed with him, that like the community deserves an open source solution. Like it shouldn't just, like, even if I build a better editor, it still needs to have an open source alternative to it. You know, like it cannot be one person in control, because I might make wrong decisions, right? Or I might have different opinions and so on and so forth, right? So, and that's part of like what I want to do for SudokuPad 2.0 is also to break it up a little bit more. So for example, the rendering, the way it displays things, I'd love to open source that. You know, I would like to have editors be able to just use that so puzzles look similar and we don't have to worry about things converting and how they look and so on and so forth, you know. I'd like to have the puzzle engine work completely independently, so I can run it on a server, you know, to validate a replay, for example, without it needing a browser. You know, like little things like that. You know, all the data formats and stuff, I want to pull them out, document them, right? Have a repository of conversions so anybody can just read the documentation of what the format looks like and build something. You know, right now people do, but with a lot of effort. You know, Sudoku Maker outputs to SudokuPad, but he put in a lot of effort to try to make that happen. You know, and it should be easier, right? It should be easier for other people to do these things. And the easier it gets, the more things get done.
Definitely. Honestly, Sven, I'm like obsessed with you now. And I hope everyone in the chat, I mean, who's listening to this, is really appreciate Sven. I think you have done a great job for the community. We're so happy to have you. And I mean, sadly, we have to move on to the next segment. I wish we could speak like for the next few hours, but I don't think that's possible. But thank you so much, Sven, for coming on.
Yeah, I always hope that maybe the SudokuCon will do sort of like a bi-weekly or maybe a monthly live stream, and we can kind of do what we did today in 24 hours, maybe do again over the next 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we could do it. I mean, I want to say I'm sure we can do that, but I don't know if I'm sure. Like, for real, for real. But thank you so much, Sven. I think, thanks for sharing so much. And I think everyone enjoyed that. And like I said, we hope to hear from you soon.
Yeah, I live stream every week, but mostly it's just me yelling at my computer to do the right thing.
You heard that, folks?
That's it from me. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
All right, I think we are gonna take a short break, and then we're gonna have a short intermission, and then we're gonna have Skojo. Skojo, he's gonna demonstrate setting a Sudoku puzzle, and Wes and I are gonna solve a Pedoku after that, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, Wes.
I won't, because you're not.
Okay, so see you back in like, what, 5 minutes?
Probably. Yep.
How do I see that?
So we're going to be setting a puzzle in the next half hour or so. And if you go to the donation page on the website, you can vote for what constraints I'm going to use. I believe there's a list of 9 that you can choose from, and I'll be using the top 3 to set the puzzle. So if you go do that now, hopefully we'll have enough donations to actually get me a rule set before we start.